My grandma had a really creepy childhood. My grandmother and her best friend used to go to this feed store early in the mornings to get their flour and cornmeal. They had this little red wagon that they would use to haul the sacks back in. Well, the only way to get around back then was by horse or by foot. The feed store was about 2 miles from their homestead. They'd usually leave in the early morning while it was still dark out to get there when it opened. One morning, while it was still dark and they started off, it had rained all night before, so there was a thin layer of fog in the air. My grandmother said that her and her friend were skipping along their way when they saw a figure of a man in the distance. As they got closer, they could clearly see that he was walking in their direction. Both of them saw this man. He was wearing a suit and had a cane. He looked like he was dressed for a party. As they got closer and closer to him, he noticed them too and was looking right at them. He was whistling as he walked, almost like he was strolling through a park. It got to the point where they were close enough to say good morning to him, and they did. Just as they were about to pass the man on foot, he vanished. Both of them looked behind them to see if he had gone off the road or somewhere up in the woods, but he was gone. The second story my grandmother told me was when she was a little girl, 10 years old, I believe it was. Anyway, she told me this story about an old man that lived way back up in the woods she and her friend used to play in. She and her friend were playing one day and came across what looked like to be an abandoned cabin. They went over to play in it but found someone still lived there. That's when they met this old man. She said he was a kind man and gave her and her friend apples from the two trees he had. She said they would go there to hear him tell stories, and they had watched him levitate off the ground time and time again. One day they went to go meet the old man, and as they came into the clearing where his cabin was, it was gone. There was nothing there, and the whole area was grown up with trees. They were certain that they were at the exact spot where they had met him the first time, only this time there was no indication that anyone had ever lived there. The soil had not been disturbed, there were no trails leading off or tracks of any kind. The only thing that they did find were two little apple tree saplings. My grandmother swears up and down that this actually happened. Again, I have no logical explanation for either of these stories.